Great. Well, good morning. I hope you're all feeling well today. So does anyone have any challenging stakeholders? Could you raise your hands? Great. Well, you've come to the right place because this is about putting yourself in my place. And the first rule of good customer service is about treating people as you'd expect to be treated yourself, right? And it's simple, but a lot of people don't do that. So I'm Chris Rushworth, I'm Head of Product for Dr. Care Anywhere, and I'm going to teach you some of my skills and sort of strategy for success, hopefully. So, a bit about my journey. So, I started my journey on physical products in 1996. Yes, I can see the person in the front going, how old is he? So I actually got my first job due to my gender. I went to a company that produced toiletries, and the managing director was female, and she wanted a male because everyone else in the office was male. And I could work computers, and she said, I need someone who can work a computer. Her words, not mine. And so I got the job. And then I ended up designing physical products, things like this. And my first job was really around designing physical products for Body Shop. And the second one was a company that had one store in London at that time, which was Jo Malone. Things have changed slightly since then. So as well as being able to do computer stuff, I then really got interested in computers even more and started to study to be a web developer. And at that point, I got my first role working on an online website for exams officers, submitting exam results, which was kind of its first of its kind at the time, which was for City and Guilds. And then I got my first job as a web developer in 2001 for the NHS. And that led me on to really understanding more about healthcare. And then 2 years later, I realized that everyone was becoming a web developer by that stage. It seemed to be saturated with web developers. And so I decided to move to an operational role. And I decided to implement patient choice because it was really important to me. So that's what led me to become the product lead for the NHS Choose and Book solution, which was about point of choice at referral. And then I spent 16 years in Oracle Cerner implementing different types of products in different product roles, working from market entry to sales. And then I spent the last 7 years implementing electronic patient records in London across 4 NHS trusts, which you could say is where a lot of this comes from, because I was working with lots of challenging stakeholders along the way. And then that all culminated in me becoming a guest lecturer in digital transformation and also becoming head of product for Dr. Care Anywhere. And for those of you who don't know Dr. Care Anywhere, it's a virtual GP platform enabling you to have safe, effective care wherever and whenever you want, 24/7, 365 days a year. So let's dive into it. So, have you ever been in a meeting where everyone comes with their problems and no answers? Happens way too often, right? At this point, I think everyone has turned on to an automatic no. And I would be chairing a program board meeting where everyone would be assembled to talk about how they were getting on with implementing the records across London. And everyone would come with a no in disguise. So imagine it's wearing a cape and a hat and, some glasses, etc. And they'd say something like, oh no, we can't do that, we tried it before. Oh, our stakeholders won't do that. Or in this case, there's a good example here, our stakeholder gets his PA to do that. So it'd always be lots of no's and no answers, no actual resolution. So I'd be sat there making a list of 5 things I think they could do. Of course, I was very popular. And then I would be at the end thinking, well, I don't understand why they're not thinking outside the box, why they're not coming up with some solutions. So that's when I came up with oppose, propose. What can you do? So this is where they need to step outside of their box and automatic no and actually think about the problem. Because they're on automatic no, they haven't actually thought about it. The moment you ask them and you say, could you propose how we could move forward, they actually do take a step back, physically or virtually, and they actually have to think about the problem. So, oppose, propose, your new answer to this problem. So I've given this tip and trick to quite a few people over the years, and one of my friends who works for a big bank, who shall remain nameless in case they're here, does use it, and I've got some really good feedback. So please give me your feedback if you decide to use it. I hope you do. And I look forward to hearing from you. When you first use it, you can see the light bulb coming on. And you might need to get the ball rolling by proposing some things to them, right? Because they may not necessarily have some ideas straight away. But to get them to actually move past the problem is the best thing ever. And you're sat there going, yes, I've got some suggestions. So let's find the middle ground and move forward. So, you know your stakeholders better than I do. No point in me pretending I know them. Some of you are my stakeholders. But in this case, what about the ones that have fallen off the change curve? So you've done your stakeholder matrix, you brought them along the curve, doesn't that look nice? And there's some cases where some people have dropped off, right? And a lot of people say if they've dropped off the change curve, you can't get them back. Well, I disagree. I propose, see what I did there? I propose that you can get them back. And the way you do that is you actually create an action plan for them. So what do you know about the person that you're trying to engage with? What do you have in common with them? Now, we're all living in a virtual world now, and some meetings may happen virtually. You may not get a chance to actually meet them in person in some cases, and that can also be an extra barrier. But think about the things you have in common. So, do they have children, for example? I don't have children, but I have a godson who's going through the terrible twos at the moment. So please send help and chocolate. Not for him, for me. And also, what about actually going for a coffee with the person? Break down the barrier that way. Sounds simple, I know, but some people don't do that. And if they're in Manchester, you're in London, and you can't actually go for a coffee with them physically, why not put together a business plan so you can actually go there, combine it with other things, try to tackle it that way. And then think about who actually knows that person. So you can tackle them from a pincer movement, and they will know them better than you do. And they may know things about that person that you don't know, and may help you actually move forward. So that would be my tips and tricks for that one. But if you've got disengaged and negative stakeholders, and once you have brought them back on the curve, they are likely to be still negative about quite a lot of things, and it takes a lot of work to move them up and further forward. In this case, they will be already negative, and in this case, you need to avoid the void of negativity. And what is that? The void of negativity starts forming when there is no information. In fact, I'm going to see if anyone starts looking at their emails after this, because maybe there's a void forming after you realize there's one. So, let me tell you a story about the void of negativity. So I am stood at Liverpool Street Station, and true story, because I travel via Liverpool Street, and my train is cancelled. I know, shock. And there's no information, even more of a shock. So at this point, you start to hear the noise on the concourse of everybody going on their mobile phone going, oh, God, it's cancelled again. Oh, third time this month or whatever it is. That is the void of negativity. You start to hear the noise increasing. And the more it goes on, the louder the noise gets. And the moment some information comes on the tannoy, you start to hear the noise going down. And that is the same with your stakeholders. Maybe they're waiting for some information from you, and you haven't got back to them, because you're probably waiting for some information from somewhere else in the business, right? And they're sat there at 5 p.m. going, oh, they haven't got back to me. Typical. You can just imagine it, right? And you can put yourself in their place, because you're probably doing the same thing about a company or an organization or something where you're not particularly very happy with them. So, with that in mind, the sort of thing you can do is send an update before the end of the day. If you don't have an answer, even give them an update to say, these are the things I have done. And you'll be surprised and amazed how much that makes a difference. And someone got any batteries? Right. And also the other thing is, you may be stuck in the endless email loop where you're trying to get an answer for your stakeholders, right? The email loop, the one that goes on forever. And it's the one where people keep adding 5 people to it. You know, oh, we haven't got enough people from marketing on this email, let's add another 5. And it just keeps growing and growing and growing, and you're like, oh, will someone take responsibility for this? But absolutely no, that's not what happens. So we end up playing email ping pong. So we're going back and forth, back and forth. And bits of the picture are being formed by different people. So someone from marketing might be answering and batting it back. Someone from data might be batting their answer back. And again, we still don't have anyone who's actually taking responsibility for this thing, and it's just growing. So it's so annoying, and at some point, somebody needs to get to the point where you go, right, let's have a call on this, because it's going to go on forever. So let's break the chain by saying that. And if you're the one waiting for the answer, of course, you're the one that is in the frame for this, regardless. And in that respect, and one of the things you need to do is, let's book a meeting with the person you're waiting for an answer from. Just a quick 30-minute one. And you'll be surprised how quickly they get back to you. And they'll say something like, oh, sorry, I'm really, really busy, back-to-back meetings, etc. Yes, probably that is the reason why they haven't got back to you. But it's amazing how much of a difference that makes, because you get your answer really quickly. And yes, they may have like 500 emails in their inbox, and that's the reason why they haven't seen it. But if you need an answer, that's the way to break the cycle. So do you also currently face a day of endless back-to-back meetings? Yes. Okay, this is the modern world we live in, right? And you have no time to go to the little person's room, as I call it, and you've got no time for a cup of coffee, cup of tea, smoothie. Well, maybe not enough time for a smoothie. But it would be really good to consider others by starting your meetings at 5 past the hour or 35 minutes past the hour in some cases. So I always start my meetings in that way. So you have a buffer between them. You're considering others. And then also think about, do I need a full hour for this meeting? And this is where the 5 Ps comes in. So yesterday we had 4 Ds, I think. And today we've got 5 Ps. Let's collect all the letters. And do you need a full hour? And that's the question. I don't think you do. So how many people here often get a meeting invite with a really great agenda, and actually in most cases you get nothing, right? You just get an email agenda that's blank, and you get catch up as the title. Isn't that helpful? Would you like to catch up about my holiday plans? Okay. So, the 5 Ps helps with this. Now, you could be very strict and say, right, if you're not following this, I'm going to decline your meeting. Digital transformation. So, purpose. What is the reason for the actual meeting? I mean, it's simple, I know, but you'll be surprised, as I say, the amount of meeting invites you get with nothing in them. let's give ourselves some explanation. Can you cut down the meeting to 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 40 minutes? I'd say absolutely you can if you're using the 5 Ps, because most of the meeting, if you don't use this, is spent doing the prep at the beginning of the meeting, going, right, this is what we're going to do. So, who is actually needed for the meeting? Let's go back to our never-ending email chain. Do you need 5 people from marketing, 5 people from sales, 5 people from wherever else? Absolutely not, you don't. You need the key people that are really needed to make the decision, right? So let's just keep it to that core group. If they forward it on, that's fine, but let's try to keep it to a minimum. And then process. What is it you're expecting to cover in the meeting and how? So if Chris is going to give you a demo of the latest solution, then put Chris is going to give a demo of the solution. If Chris is going to review a document and walk through a document, put that down. If someone's going to explain a process, put the name of the person and then put that they're going to explain the process so they know in advance that's what's expected of them. And then preparation. What do they need to do before the meeting? Do they need to read a document? Do they need to go on Confluence and look at some documentation on there? Do they need to look at some user stories? Do they need to look at some designs, etc.? What is it that they need to do before the meeting? So put that in there as well. And then the final thing, but it's most important really, is what's the product outcome? So what are you expecting to achieve for the product at the end? Is it an agreed design? Is it an agreed UI? Is it agreed feature, epic, whatever it may be? So, I've only got 20 minutes. I could have done 2 days. But those are my core hints and tips. And I thought it would be really useful to tell you, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. And also, I do have some articles on Medium as well, so please follow me on there. And happy to take any questions that you may have. My team decided that they wanted to put quiz on there because I've done quizzes for my team. The last one was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and I did all the sound effects. So now they're obsessed. And I now need to do Weakest Link, which I'm dreading the HR issues that I may have. Anyway, so that's everything I have for you for today. I hope it was useful. Remember to oppose, propose. Thank you.
This was an amazing start to the day, Chris. And also, we get lots of time to ask Chris questions. Or we can do Who Wants to Be a Millionaire right now.
Oh, yeah.
Could we hear one of the sound effects, please?
Oh, no, they're on soundboards. So.
Ah, okay, so you didn't, I'm like imagining you doing it with your mouth.
No.
Okay. All right. Okay, all right. Jump on Slido.com, use 457, and throw some questions in there for Chris. I loved how you talked about the automatic no.
Mm.
I think we've all been in those meetings or even in our personal lives where, like, going into it, the stakeholders are like, this isn't going to happen, this can't, or sometimes people are basically saying, I won't be the decision maker. I'm not going to, like, commit to anything, so I'm just hands up. It's not me. It's not my fault. It can't work.
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the void, your description of like seeing people being sucked into that, I mean that can happen so quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. You may be in a void right now because someone's waiting for something from you, which is why I said I'm waiting to see if anyone jumps on their email.
Yeah, you can like hear that sucking sound of the black hole. It's like, uh-oh, it's happening right now.
Yes.
Your idea to like help with communication there, like following up, even if you don't have the answer yet, I'm still pursuing it, it's coming. That's because they'll just keep going, they'll keep spiraling. They'll add 5 more people to the email.
Yes, of course, and send you a meeting invite with no agenda on.
So you mentioned in the slide to start the meeting 5 minutes later. Why would you do that?
This is to give the buffer between the meetings, because in a virtual world especially, you don't have time to go to the little person's room. or time for a coffee or whatever it may be. So it's being considerate to others, putting yourself in their place, essentially.
Yeah.
See, it's all linked.
There-
So, yeah.
I think at least Google Calendar even has a setting called like healthy meeting times or something. So you can, you know, rather than 30-minute blocks, it's a 25-minute meeting or 55-minute meeting.
Yeah.
These little things where like people don't think about all the other meetings that person has.
Absolutely, and I'm, you know, talking to my team about that, where, you know, I said, be kind to yourself. You know, make sure you're blocking out time for your lunch. Make sure you're having focus time. Those things are really important, and otherwise they get burnt out. So, you know, making sure you're thinking about your team and your colleagues, and say, well, actually, you know, it's really important.
So what you're saying is your stakeholder who is already nervous about the project might feel a little better if they've had time to use the loo before they jump on your meeting.
Yes. Well, also they've got more focus, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Pro tip, 5 minutes. Any tips on managing, oh, this is such a good question, C-level stakeholders who seem immovable?
Yes, I do. I didn't cover this, but this is where peer-to-peer conversations really come in really well. So if you've got, for example, you're trying to get to a CEO of a company, they would respond much better to another CEO of a company that uses your product, for example, than they would to you. So setting up peer-to-peer conversations breaks down a lot of barriers. So, for example, working with clinicians, I'm not a clinician, although people think I am.
Your bedside manner is too good.
Oh, thank you. So, you know, they actually respond much better to another clinician. They can talk shop with each other. It's very similar with C-suite. Can get my teeth in. So I would say that that's another way of breaking it down.
That's interesting. That's the best answer to a question like that I've heard.
Oh,
I like
thank you.
that. Yeah,
You're my favorite today.
How do you improve recurring meetings with no clear agenda that you're expected to be part of?
Yes, so for recurring meetings, what I normally do is I put the agenda on Confluence and put the link, I put the 5 Ps in the meeting invite. The actual process goes as a link into the Confluence page, and then I use Confluence with the tick boxes to go through the items that we're going to cover, and then as you go through them, you just tick them off. Obviously, trying to make sure that you don't have a recurring meeting where nothing is going to be valuable. There's no point in having a meeting for the sake of it, and I think that's one of those things where it needs you to go, hang on a minute, we don't really need this meeting, or maybe condense things together and actually look at the terms of reference and all of those type of things, because it can get out of hand, right? You can have loads of meetings where there's no value to them. So, you know, try to go back to the core of why you really need it.
You mentioned responding to a meeting that has no set agenda with no. I work at an organization where we can do that, and also one where it's okay for you to literally leave the meeting if you're no longer adding value.
Yes.
But I would imagine that's sort of cultural based on your stakeholder, your organization. And what advice would you give us for like responding no, but gracefully?
So first of all, you need to go and watch the videos on Radical Candor. That's the first thing I would suggest. The second thing is that obviously oppose, propose. So if you're actually opposing the meeting, propose what they can do to actually have the meeting in the first place. So, you know, you can send them the 5 Ps. I keep the 5 Ps template in Notepad, and then I just cut and paste it into my meetings. That's how I do it. I'm waiting for Outlook to have an enhancement. So,
Aren't we all?
Yes. So you can do it that way. And I think that really does work well. And again, yeah, you know your stakeholders better than I do. There's no point in me pretending. Some of them are going to be responsive to that and some are not.
Ruth, would you mind scrolling up so we can see a few more of the questions? Thank you so much, Ruth, for the win. You mentioned, there we go. Thank you. After how many emails do you see the void forming? Do you jump in and say, we need a meeting, let's get our 5 Ps going here? When did the alarm sound for you?
I think you need to know your stakeholder. There's quite a few examples in my head right now where I know exactly how they respond to things. So for them, I need to get back to them by the end of the day. Otherwise, it's going to be the void starts forming. I would always say the end of the day. Unless you know them really, really well, they're not particularly negative. They're a bit further on the change curve, in which case they may not be the ones that go negative as easily, but they may get to the end of the week and start going into the void because they've been sat there waiting for an answer from you, and they've, looking through their email and gone, oh, I still haven't got an answer on that. So, again, it's about the individual, where they are on the change curve, but I would always make sure that the ones that you know are particularly negative are the ones that you do respond to them by the end of the day, whatever time zone you're on.
It's such an empathetic thing. Like, they also have a task list for the day or for the week.
Yes.
They also want to tick that thing off. And even if you're not answering the question or giving the information, they can still tick it off, or they can still say, it's in progress, or...
Yeah. And they as far as they're concerned, they have the issue, they need to resolve it. They want to know that you're dealing with it. They don't want you to think that you're sat there just reading a certain magazine or whatever. And try not to mention any names.
Face-to-face,
yes.
It works out well sometimes, but also what suggestions would you have for just reducing the numbers of meetings with the same effectiveness of that face-to-face experience?
That's a great question. I would say it's all about an effective agenda again, so making sure you have clear objectives about what you're trying to achieve, and also making sure that you know what you're wanting to close off in that meeting, and what do they want, what do the key stakeholders want in that meeting as well. Because if you're not achieving that, then there's no point in having the meeting, really.
Yeah. At least at K15T, we've had some success at least reducing, you mentioned just having the key people in the meeting. Mm-hmm. So we also are using Confluence Pages for our agendas, but we open them up to the greater audience, like, here's the agenda, here's what we'll be talking about, throw your information onto this page, and then the 3 people can get together and talk it through, and then the page is out there for anybody to see.
Not 30 people.
No, not 30 people, no. And we found that with COVID starting, right? We're all like, oh, we still have to all be on the call. I think there's everyone feels a little safer when there's the 30 people, because then the 3 people don't have to commit to anything.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I can see that. And that's where the ping pong starts as well, because again, you have no one taking responsibility. And really the person who's representing that function should be the one that takes it back to that area and takes responsibility.
Yeah.
And with radical candor, you can say that.
I would both be excited and scared of being on a meeting with you, Chris. just speaking from the heart.
I tried to make it fun. I hope that came across.
What tips do you have to make stakeholders involved actively in a project?
Oh, that's a great question. It depends how much you want them to be involved in the project, because you can involve them everything from the beginning all the way to the end. But obviously, we all know that if you don't involve your stakeholders, then you're going to face challenges and problems. So they need to be involved from the inception, really, from your discovery all the way through to delivery. And even, somebody who's working in a function that you don't necessarily think of, have a list of all of your functions. Make sure you're crossing them all off in your stakeholder matrix. Recently there was an example where I know finance wasn't consulted in something, and it was a case of, well, they should have been on that matrix. So I created a sort of matrix list of everything, and then you're considering everything from reporting to business analytics to UI to all the things that you would normally think of in a product. But there's lots of things that, can come out the woodwork if you don't think about them.
So much of this is communication, which I love, and also it's a huge challenge. You're finding what every person needs when they need it.
Yes.
Even if you don't have the information they really want.
Yes, and the pressure's on with when it's patients' lives as well. So, yeah.
Okay, so thoughts on Slack threads versus does the void come along sooner or later in Slack threads?
Yeah, so Slack, I have positive things to say and negative things to say. But yes, I think that it's the same principle, right? Your Slacks can go on forever as well. And it's okay to go at some point, we need to jump on a call about this because, if you're not getting the answer, if it's not getting resolved, then it's just going to keep going. And more people might get added. It's the same as an email, really. Yeah.
All right, so one final question.
Yes.
Request for comment. We've all gotten those emails where it's like, RFC, jump on this page or email your thoughts. Have you had success in using this approach to bring focus?
Yes and no. It depends who they are. I think that would be my political answer. But yes, I think you can, like with everything, open communication, as you're saying, is really important. So, giving the people the opportunity to have that ability to comment is really important.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for your time, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks for kicking off our morning. Fantastic.
I'll take this.